name's Chris Hodges. I spent about 10 years in the US Navy as an officer in the Pacific Ocean and sometimes in Europe. I then spent about 10 years in General Electric as a black belt, master black belt, and quality leader. Then I went into consulting, and I was a partner in Accenture and Deloitte for years. My last big role in big consulting companies was 4 years as an intelligent automation leader in the Nordics, working across Northern Europe and sometimes into Southern Europe, depending on the contracts. Hence, my passion and focus on the concepts of intelligent automation. So if I could, let me shift over to make sure, hopefully you guys can see my screen. Brian, if I think you can see my screen, so I'm gonna press on. Brian, let me know if there's anything wrong with what I'm doing. Okay, I want to start with Jack Welch, the #1 CEO of the 20th century, had a bit of a problem. It was a bit of a problem. Unfortunately, which meant I had a big problem, but I'm going to come back to that. I'm a little bit ahead of myself. This presentation is about succeeding with technology, innovating, and becoming more profitable. Presentation is broken into 3 pieces. It's a 3-part story. The first part of the story is a roadblock. The second part of the story identifies a solution. And the third part of the story finishes with a tangible, real success. I think it'll hopefully be motivating for all. But let's go back to what that roadblock is. I'd like you to think about 3 big events in your life. Your first big job, your first big success, and maybe your first big disappointment, because we're going to cover all 3 of those. It's 1996, and I'm a naval officer about to stop working for the Navy and go to start working for a general. You may think of this glamorous visual of a ship, but in fact, I was on shore duty in the UK, and I was finishing graduate school. But I was about to leave graduate school and go to work for something incredibly exciting, and that is the General Electric with Jack Welch and Six Sigma. And at that time, Six Sigma had the kind of buzz and excitement that you might think of as artificial intelligence and cryptocurrency. That's how it felt at the time. So I was leaving the Navy with my wife, 2 kids, school loans, and a brand new Volvo that I really couldn't afford. And so you may ask yourself, why with those kind of financial debts would you go out and buy a Volvo? Well, the answer is, I grew up valuing quality, stability, and fatherly praise. So what was I about to do? Jack Welch was going to become my sort of father of sorts at an executive level. Six Sigma was all about quality, and a Volvo was all about stability. So it made perfect sense to me. So extend myself, I did. We moved to Silicon Valley, which was a perfect place for my Asian Anglo family, which is what we are. Great place to move if you're a multicultural family. And unfortunately, we couldn't afford to buy a house. We could only afford to rent. So because we were renting, we couldn't have a dog, and the Volvo effectively became the family pet. Anyone who's ever owned a Volvo kind of knows that feeling. I know Brian's had a Volvo, so he can relate to that as well. So 3 years, 2 states, 4 houses later, I thought I moved a lot in the Navy. 3 years, 2 states, 4 houses later, I land my first big job in GE, and it's in Tokyo. And I'm going to run e-business and Six Sigma for one of Jack Welch's businesses in Tokyo. My Japanese wife is delighted beyond belief. She's going to go back to her home country, the city where she went to college, and she's going to get to live as an expatriate. I mean, that's a pretty good deal. That is, I was excited too until I met my new boss at the welcoming reception. Maybe you've been to the teppanyaki restaurant on the top of the A&A Hotel. Think about Benihana, but instead of airborne shrimp and all other theatrics burning, volcanoes of onions and things, the Japanese only theatrics is to put live shrimp straight onto a grill, covered by a stainless steel dish. So I arrive on the 36th floor, I bounce off the hotel, I'm full of excitement and vigor, extend my hand to my boss and say, "Hi, I'm here." I hadn't met him before. "I'm here to help you run Six Sigma and e-business." And he looks at me and he says, "Oh, well, that's kind of too bad, because the only 2 areas of the business I don't care about are Six Sigma and e-business." Well, I don't know about you, but my enthusiasm evaporated completely. And what I could see was going to be a very long couple of years working. In fact, I felt like one of those live shrimp thrown on the grill. I returned to the hotel room to my wife, and I was planning to say, honey, we may need to reconsider this situation. But she was so excited to be there that I just decided, well, I'm going to have to make it work. But that left me with another problem. And that problem was, we had left our faithful Volvo, the family dog, right, back in the United States, and we had nowhere to store it. So the question is, sell it or bring it to Japan at some ridiculous cost. But I'd ask you, would you sell your family pet? Well, I wouldn't, and neither would my kids. So we brought the Volvo to Japan. And it's a good thing, because during the day, I thanklessly worked on Six Sigma and e-business, which I loved. My boss didn't. And then on the weekends, we could take the Volvo and drive all over Japan. It was wonderful. It was really, that part was great. After about a year, Jack Welch announced he was coming to hold court with all the GE businesses in Tokyo at the Four Seasons Hotel. That's the Four Seasons Hotel up on the screen. I was pretty excited. So my boss begrudgingly came into my office and said, okay, Jack's coming. You get 2 slides and 5 minutes. I am not kidding. My career at this point was going to depend on 2 slides and 5 minutes in these multi-day meetings that are going to go on about all the individual businesses. Well, I don't know about you, if you've ever had, a moment like that where you say, oh, wow, a lot depends on this one single thing. So I practiced those 2 pages like my life depended on them. And my business life probably did depend on doing those pages well. And Jack was notorious for being incisive and really asking, tough questions. Maybe you can think back to 5 minutes of your life that depended like that. So the day arrived. Jack is sitting at the center of this table, and each business would sit in the chairs and they would give the brief. And we're going through all kinds of presentations, waiting for our turn. Mid-morning, Jack turns over a page, looks straight at me, and he says, okay, Chris, what have you got? And this is what it felt like. Tunnel vision. All I could see was Jack's face and what's going to happen, right? So the 5 minutes go by in a blur, and I go through the points that I need to cover. Specifically, we had one star project, which was electronic document approval. Think of DocuSign, but this is 20 years ago. So at the time, it was kind of cutting edge. We thought it was pretty cool. First company in all of Japan that did an electronic document approval process. So I was pretty excited about that. I managed to get through the presentation without blowing myself up. And Jack asks 2 really hard questions. And thankfully, I knew the answers. So that was good. I made it through that. Right before he went to the next person, he took his black Sharpie that he took all the time with him, and he wrote, best page Jack, across this page. Now, I don't know about you, but I wanted to jump across that table. In fact, I would have crawled through broken glass to get to that slide and take it with me, right? I mean, that's how I felt about it. That would have been a horrible mistake. Would have ended my career, but I would have crawled through broken glass for Jack, because that's how he made me feel in that moment. I would do anything to make him feel good about what I was doing. It was a fantastic moment. So when the meeting ended, I got up to leave, and I had to kind of whisper close to my boss. And I'm expecting him to say something. He won't even make eye contact. That's how he feels. Won't even make eye contact. I was crushed. I was like, dude, I'm doing everything I can for you in our business. So when I left that room, I thought, all this international glamour stuff is nice, but it sucks when nobody really appreciates what you're doing. I mean, Jack did, but I didn't work directly for Jack. So have you ever given your all to something and then not felt a lot of appreciation? And then how much did you want to do more of it, right? So the problem Jack had that I said initially was he had a problem. And that is, he was passionate about e-business and Six Sigma. But some of his leaders, especially some of the ones further away from the home base, they weren't. So Jack's small problem was a big problem. I left GE a few years after that, and so did Jack. Not for that reason, but anyway, I left. But I never left a passion for people, process, quality, transformation, which is why I'm with you guys today at Business Transformation, Operational Excellence. So things are different today, and that's really important. So let's talk about some of the things that are different from that period and how they relate. Well, some things have changed. What used to just be a nightmare at the end of the Indiana Jones movie where they can't find the Ark of the Covenant has now become the global supply chain. It's chaos. It's thrown business completely into turmoil. And the workforce is very different. So Gen Z and millennial employees, they won't put up with the stuff that I put up with. They're smarter than I was, frankly. They'll walk out the door. They get treated badly, like the story I just told you, and they'll just leave. They'll go work for somebody else. That's a big change. Another big change is that electronic document approval process that I had implemented that I felt it was so sexy and cool is nothing compared to what's possible with intelligent automation and AI and machine learning today. Huge differences. But unfortunately, it also scares the hell out of people, which is what this picture indicates. If you just say you're going to automate things, that can really make people nervous. Some things are still the same as they were before. According to McKinsey & Company, you've probably seen this study before, 70% of all business transformations fail. And because we're doing transformations faster than we've ever done them before, we are destroying value faster than we've ever destroyed it before. There are successes, of course, but the ones that are destroying value are doing it at record speed. And another thing, unfortunately, that's still the same, sorry about that, is there are millions of young, motivated employees out there who are very eager to make an impact and a difference and feel purpose in their jobs and have what they do appreciated. But there's still too many bosses like the one I had, like the one in Tokyo. So that leaves us with a problem. What does it all mean? Well, I think the answer is clear. Sorry, early in my time zone. Business transformations are more important and they're more life and death than they've ever been with the way the business world is evolving. So if we're going to do them successfully, what's the formula we need to follow to make that happen? Is there a formula? Is there an inspiration or a philosophy? Well, I would offer that it starts with helping humans be heroes. And that takes us to the second part of the story. Because making heroes makes for amazing employees and amazing colleagues and amazing businesses. And why does it really matter? Because if we're not careful, we're going to come back to offices and the people will have quit because they can, and they don't want to work in a place that doesn't make them feel good anymore. So how do we make them feel like heroes? What do I mean by hero? Do you have to fly through the sky, X-ray vision, a cape, and have pectoral muscles that look like a bodybuilder? No, you don't. A hero is a person who realizes more of their potential than the average person and achieves some inspirational goal. That inspirational goal could be including conquering their lesser selves. So being heroic can be very small, it can be very big. But the point is human beings want to be heroes. What am I backing that up with? Let me introduce Joseph Campbell. If you don't already know Joseph Campbell, he's well worth knowing quite a bit about. When he died, he was a global leader, probably the global leader and global expert on world mythology. He'd studied mythologies across the globe. And he wrote a book called The Hero with 1,000 Faces. And in The Hero with 1,000 Faces, he found there is something that in almost every culture exists, and it's almost the same. And it's called the hero's journey. So you may have heard the hero's journey. Well, I know you've seen the hero's journey. Because if you've seen any of these, The Hobbit, The Bourne Identity, The Matrix, Harry Potter film collection, and 100 other films, 1,000 other films, then you already know the hero's journey. In fact, you know it yourself as an individual and as a person. So you might be saying, well, Chris, that's nice. Those are movies and screenwriters, right, making stuff up. It's fiction, right? Well, no, actually it's not. Because these 7 people, men, women, black, white, Indian, gay, straight, have all followed the hero's journey. Think about that. All of these great people doing completely different things in their lives have followed the hero's journey. And I'll explain what I mean by that. But first, I only know one of these heroes. Her name is Sunita Williams. And I know she followed a hero's journey to compete as a woman in a mostly male-dominated world. She followed that hero's journey and heard that call to adventure all the way into space. She's also spent more time on the International Space Station than I have spent on an aircraft carrier. So don't tell me the hero's journey is only for people mythologically. But what about your job and your company? Well, the hero's journey, I'm reminding you of something actually, because you already know this. The hero's journey is intrinsic to what you want to do in your life. And you'll see what I mean by that in just a minute. So that's the hero's journey in full. But rather than put up a complicated graphic, let me walk through the steps. The hero's journey starts with a call to adventure. The call to adventure is, in the movies, it's when some dramatic event happens and the movie starts, right? In real life, it happens when you get that itch in the back of your head, or maybe a scratch in your neck, or a phone call, or something that says, you got to do something different. You got to stretch, you got to grow, you got to go beyond the boundaries you've currently been in before. That's the call to adventure. And you can not answer the phone, you can hide from the email, but that knock, as Joseph Campbell tells us, will keep coming and the phone will keep ringing. That is the call to adventure. And a lot of neuroses can be built by not listening to the call to adventure. But when you do, you begin the first stage of the hero's journey. It's called separation. Separation is when you break from the old, go to the new, and suddenly experience things in a completely different way. And I'm not talking about quit your job and go to a new company, although that could be a hero's adventure or hero's journey. It can simply be seeing your company and your job in a different role and realizing you're going to stretch and go beyond it. In the movie, Neo in the Matrix takes the red pill. And what happens? The world is never the same. Harry Potter receives a letter in the post box. In fact, he receives several thousand. And he suddenly realizes he's a wizard. He's not even sure what a wizard is. The world will never be the same. Luke Skywalker returns to a farm, and the only relatives he knows are dead. The world will never be the same. That's separation. The next phase is initiation. Initiation is when you're out of the old and into the new, but you don't know what to do in the new. In the case of technology, you don't know how to use this technology. You don't know what this new change is. You're nervous. You're scrambling around. What used to be comfortable is no longer there. Well, what does that look like in a movie? In a movie, it looks like, wow, I can do something with this. Now I need a coach and a mentor, and that's Obi-Wan in the case of Star Wars. Or in the case of Harry Potter, it becomes Dumbledore. He learns to use the power that he now has. But again, you might just say, well, that's movies, Chris. I mean, what are we talking about? I work in a real job. Yeah, let's talk about a real job. So in this initiation phase, imagine it's you or one of your colleagues at a team meeting. And for the first time, a young colleague is going to speak out with a bold idea. Or that colleague is going to take on more responsibility than they've ever taken on before. Or they're going to challenge the status quo. Or they're going to learn a new technology at the risk of looking dumb. That is initiation into the new. And what happens to get through initiation and get to the next phase, Joseph Campbell tells us, you must face your dragon. So the dragon is a symbol. And in world mythology, dragons are often at this phase of the hero's journey. But it doesn't always have to be a dragon. It can be Darth Vader in the Star Wars. What the dragon represents is the barrier you need to overcome, the thing you need to face in order to transcend your former self and be better or greater. It can be the fear in a team meeting. It can be learning a new technology, a new tool. It can be learning a new language, moving to another country, dealing with a new boss who doesn't seem to understand you. All of those can be the dragon. And what Joseph Campbell tells us is that we need to overcome that dragon, but we make the dragon out to be fierce and fire-breathing. And why do we do that? Because if we told ourselves we were only afraid of fear itself, then we would realize how pathetic that was. Instead, we make it to be something that it's not. But what it really is overcoming fear itself. Once we overcome the dragon, we go to the return phase of the hero's journey. And the return phase is where you go back to the tribe, your office, your group, your team, your family, and you come back a different person than you were before. Hopefully, a transcendent person than you were before. You might be bringing home gold and treasure. Or you might just be bringing home knowledge. And what does it look like? Maybe they hang medals around your neck. Maybe you get a great new bullet on your resume. Maybe you get a nice bonus. Maybe you get a better office. Maybe you just get a pat on the back. Maybe you just feel like a better person. That's the return. And at the end of the return, you find yourself back in the Shire. just like the Hobbit. So there is the Hobbit, full, dumb, and happy, sitting in his little Hobbit hole, enjoying life. You might say, done, my hero's journey is complete. What do I need to think about? Well, what Joseph Campbell's told us, and what is so true in real life, and that's his main point, is that the hero's journey is not a myth. It's what we've turned into a myth because it represents real human existence, is the call to adventure will come again. And the question is when? Will it be the next morning, the next month, the next year? But that phone will ring again and you'll go on to another adventure. So I told you, this is a 3-part story. And the third part is a success story. Here's the success story. It's Stockholm, Sweden. It's in Stockholm, Sweden, 2017. Jens was a young, ambitious operations manager in a financial services firm. And the CEO of that same company's name was Gustav. These are 2 different levels in the organization. But unfortunately, they were both looking at the same thing. The financial results of the company were not good. They were struggling, and everyone knew there was a problem in the company. So both men are very eager to help their company succeed from the different perspectives. And they face formidable challenges, not just in the financial challenges, but in the difficulty of adopting technology and change with people. Gustav had one set of problems, and they were the Machiavellian forces of the senior leadership team of the business. Every senior leadership team has very smart, motivated people who also have their own goals. And in this case, even in Sweden, they had their own goals. Gustav needed to harness that team together and make them function together. Jens had a different set of problems. He's in operations and the complexity is enormous. This is his first big job. He's a young guy. He's assigned to improve operations, but change and job loss are feared, just like dragons. So Swedish businesses can be a little risk averse, and the 2 of them were in that environment. Risk averse, kind of like a Volvo, which is why I bought a Volvo. So Jens was eager to make improvements in the company, and he knew the technology. He's a young guy, knew technology had some opportunities, but he didn't exactly know how to do it. But he was passionate. Well, one day, Jens and Gustav in the morning going to work end up on the elevator together. It's not a very tall building, so he didn't hit all the buttons on the floor and have a 10-minute conversation. But when they stepped off of the elevator, they remained talking on the platform. I only know this because Jens told me, I wasn't there. So Gustav says, good morning, Jens, and how is operations? Well, 3 or 4 minutes later, Gustav has identified a potential hero, and Jens has found an amazing opportunity. So timing be what it is, sometimes opportunities just pop up, but with opportunities come danger. So as luck will have it, I happen to be working in that region at this same time. I had moved to Scandinavia in 2015. As the intelligent automation leader. And yes, we had finally sold the Volvo before we got there. So luck and timing are a little bit like surfing. If you're going to catch a great wave, catch a great thing in your career, you have to arrange the time and place. You have to be in the right place and the right time in order to make that happen. If you're like this person on the slide, you're out too deep and you're out too early. There are no waves. You're just going to get tired and go home bored. The waves will pass right underneath you. But if you jump in too late, the waves are going to crush your head. That's not a good opportunity to be in. So the key is to balance timing and opportunity. And in this case, luck has it, we ended up meeting. So this isn't me, but anyway, it's in the picture. So Jens and I spent some time talking. He knew his company well. I knew intelligent automation well. So together we said, we better come up with this plan. Gustav had given him 30 days. He said, if you don't come up with a plan in 30 days, we'll have to take dramatic action. That puts a fire under your butt, doesn't it? So Jens and I came together, worked. I shared my knowledge. He knew about his company. He was prepared to sit down with his boss. So Jens and Gustav sat down a month later, and he laid out a plan. And that plan covered all of the constituencies that he needed to meet. It helped the customers. It helped the colleagues. It helped his peers he worked with. And it served that senior leadership team. All of those pieces are essential. Gustav was thrilled, gave him the green light, told him to go. And what their plan put together, which I was fortunate enough to work with them for several months to roll this plan out, what that plan generated was more innovation. They were doing their processes in different ways and launching new products in order that they couldn't have done before because they didn't know how. It gave them more motivation. People love to be involved in successful momentum. So more motivation. The teams were happier to do what they were doing. And of course, you can't get anything done unless it makes more money. In fact, this project had a 300% ROI. Now, you can't do that on every project, but this was a pretty successful project. But maybe the most important thing is it gave them a sense of shared purpose. Shared purpose gives the business momentum for time to come. So there's 7 steps that lets this happen. And let me explain what they did in the 7 steps. And I'll try to do it quickly. I'm looking at the clock. We don't have too much time to go through it. The first, of course, is leadership. 5 major elements. This is Marcus Aurelius, the most successful Roman emperor there ever was. And the 5 points we can take from him is to think holistically across the company, act with the knowledge of technology, send consistent messages, engage the employees, and the leader gets the reflected glory of a successful team. There are other dimensions to this. Those are the dimensions from the Malcolm Quality National Quality Award. We did an assessment across the business of where to focus on those as well. The second piece is to understand the technology. If the leaders don't understand the technology and the team doesn't understand the technology, you have a problem. If I told you, draw a building and I'll give you a pencil, that's about all you're going to come up with. But if I say, no, you have some more interesting materials to use, they're 3-dimensional. Well, you might come up with something that looked like this. So what are the tools they needed to use? They needed to understand robotic process automation, natural language processing, chatbots, virtual assistants, machine learning, and artificial intelligence. And they needed to build in an eye to the future. Third step, focusing on value. This might be cool technology for somebody, but it wasn't cool technology for what they needed. Instead, they focused on what drives value to the business. Like gold is just a symbol. What do the customers want? What's going to make the business go well? What's not just some cool metaverse where you can wander around with Mark Zuckerberg? Maybe one day that'll be really helpful for people. Right now, it's a little early. The fourth piece is about empowered and excited teams. We could spend a lot of time on this. It turns out that employee engagement comes down to what's called the magic 7. There are 7 core dimensions that if you hit these 7 a little bit, hopefully on each one, you will achieve high levels of employee engagement. Having integrity, purpose, and values of the company aligned, believing my job is important, the availability of constructive feedback. So they did a comprehensive review of that and said, we have to improve on each one of those areas. The 5th dimension is helping humans be heroes. That's the whole reason I talked about heroes and the hero's journey, because every employee at the beginning of a transformation sees this. Is my job going to be the same, straight up the middle? Am I going to end up getting forced out of the company? Or is my job going to get better and I'm going to be more human? A lesson from a long time ago, long ago and far, far away. You have 3 aspiring young professionals doing everything they can to be heroic, and they still find themselves trapped in a garbage compactor. And there's nothing they can do. Princess is barking orders, the Wookiee's shooting, the pirate's yelling, and the millennial goes swimming. Nothing saves the problem. It's only until they reach out to a robot who saves the humans and allows the humans to go forward and be more heroic. That's the metaphor I'd like people to think about. Automation can help you be human by letting you be more human, not ruining your job and your life. What I'm suggesting is automation, robotics, AI, and the rest of the 4th industrial revolution can help humans be heroes and overcome the soul-crushing barriers of boredom. The 6th dimension was an operating model built for purpose. Let me make this again visual. Yeah, the project's all over. Just do all this stuff on the Post-it notes. That rarely works. If you just build stuff and add stuff with willy-nilly, you'll end up with a gigantic mess, right? I'm sure we've all been involved in one of those. Winchester Mystery House in San Jose, California. She was an heiress to the Winchester rifle fortune. A mystic, like a bad consultant, said, just keep building, just keep changing. She built 161 rooms, 47 fireplaces, 10,000 panes of glass, and 2 ballrooms. Not a good idea. But if you build with a plan, your operating model is a plan. Like Frank Lloyd Wright, when he met with the soon-to-be owners of this home, for 2 years he's talked to them and understood the land. And when he finally built this house, he built the most impressive home, according to the American Architecture Institute, ever built in the United States. Why? Because I never design a building before I've seen the site and met the people who will be using it. So my favorite thought about this, you see this house and you say, oh, that's neat. Look at that beautiful staircase. That beautiful staircase was built because Frank Lloyd Wright knew Mrs. Kaufman liked to skinny dip. That is building something for the purpose of your customers. The final step was aligning incentives and culture. And what does that look like? Aligning incentives and culture means show me the incentive and I'll show you the outcome. We could spend a lot of time on that. Don't reward people for one thing and ask them to do something else. Together, that is the Noble Automation Now method that I have now pulled out and discerned from all of the successful projects I've worked on. Do you have to do every single step perfectly? I would suggest you do every single step a little bit, like the steps on the right, which will get you to the first floor, but the beautiful steps on the left haven't been installed yet. So a little bit of each one is better than perfection in any one. Noble automation comes from noblesse oblige. It means the responsibility of the privileged to act with generosity and nobility toward those less privileged. And it means intelligent automation and inspired leadership to maximize the outcome for all stakeholders. We don't have time for Q&A, so I want to wrap up with just what happened when I saw Jens last. Last time I saw Jens, he was on a stage talking to a multinational crowd about the positive impact of intelligent automation for his business and his career. He left the stage to thunderous, you might even say Viking level applause. I'd never seen a Swede quite glow like that. And when he was done, he offered me a ride back to my hotel in his brand new Volvo financed by his bonus. I kid you not. So the answer is, how can we all be like Jens in his successful projects? How can we have more innovation, more motivation, more profit, and make your business transformation succeed? Well, here's my belief. We can help people be heroes, and the time is now. The wave is perfect. Jump in, and this could be the ride you have. And you do it with Noble Automation Now. Thank you so much for listening. Please join us back at the top of the hour where we'll take up the next topic and we'll have some hands-on practitioner experience and we'll hear from ServiceNow. See you all in about 10 and a half minutes. Thank you very much. Take care.